Well, hello everyone on another edition of Crapper. Today with my good friend Sean Hall,
Cheers.
and of course me, Tim Appleton. Sean's had a little bit of COVID. Is it doing better now, Sean?
Yeah, a lot better now. It's basically just the malingering stage now. So yeah, thanks, Tim.
All right, lovely. Our viewers in Saint Kitts will be very happy to
Yeah.
see you back. That sounds satirical, but we do actually have listeners in Saint Kitts. It's quite nice because we have we the podcast gets listeners all around the world. So I hope we're very pleased about that, obviously, and we hope that you're all doing well. By the way, shout out to all our female listener.
Nice to have the ladies on board, isn't it, Tim?
Always is. Yeah. All right, good. Now let's get on with it. So today we are going to do it's sort of follow-up video to our Genesis video that me and Sean did. Genesis solo debut, ranking the Genesis solo debut albums. Today we're going to do ranking the Yes solo debut albums. I should say perhaps before we begin that we're going from from the classical period, which is our sort of specialism. So there won't be any Trevor Rabin, I'm afraid. Sorry, Trevor Rabin fans. By the way, did you realise I found this out? Trevor Rabin's first solo album was called Beginnings,
God,
same as Steve Howe. So that's a weird coincidence, isn't it? But yeah, so we calculate that there's 8 of these to rank. We've got Jon Anderson, Steve Howe, Alan White, Chris Squire, Rick Wakeman, Bill Bruford, Patrick Moraz, and Peter Banks. And so, yeah, we're going to go, as I say, sort of give our own rankings, 8 to 1, sort of like least favourite to most favourite. I mean, my comment on all of this, Sean, was that comment I wanted to make was that I would say that if you put all these albums together, you probably have more than enough material for a very good Yes LP. I mean, I think there's a touch of the Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Youngs here. Let's do solo albums. I mean, they're not all from the 75 period, but and sometimes you sort of wonder what it would have been like if they hadn't done solo LPs and they'd just stayed together and put another group album together. Could have been very strong. But yeah, how did you find putting this list together?
Yeah, I must admit, excuse me, I found the sort of scrabble for the bottom contenders quite tricky. So it was very difficult to filter them out. But for me, there were sort of 2 or 3 contenders for the top spot. So yeah, it was tricky, but it was really nice actually going back because I don't often listen to it's not so much like Genesis. I think where you'll either go and listen to a Peter Gabriel album or Phil Collins or Mike Rutherford or whatever. But I don't visit.
Keep going.
I don't. I don't visit
bang.
the Yes. The, Anthony Phillips, the Yes solo members. I don't seem to give quite as much play to. So it's been nice to sort of redress that a little bit.
I think that Yes were bigger at the time, don't you think? They were
Yeah.
sort of big in their moment, weren't they? Yes, and they have lots of fans today. People like us, and they are very popular today in a sort of underground way. I mean, in a way, they've gone back to being an underground band, which they were at the very beginning of their career. But when they were actually putting these albums out, they were kind of a big deal, weren't they? Yes, people thought they always won like the best group prizes and things in NME polls and stuff like that. But they got slightly forgotten about, didn't they? Later on.
Yeah, I think they got eclipsed by sort of Floyd and Genesis, really, didn't they? They sort of became the big stadium. But I think Yes always remained popular in the States, didn't they? Not so much in Britain or Europe.
Oh yeah, they were really sort of buried, weren't they, in their home country of Britain? But yeah, in the States, everybody knows your name, to almost quote the theme tune to Cheers. Everybody knows their name. Yeah, anyway, okay, good. Well, look, without further ado, let's get into it. So, we are going to start with number 8. I mean, do you want to kick it off? You all right to kick it off?
Yeah, I don't mind. Well, my album in last position, and this is no way a reflection on his musical abilities, or shall I be honest and say percussive abilities? It's Alan White and Ramshackled, which was from '75, and the only song I really knew on this album was "You Silly Woman," which is always in Yes videos, isn't it? They sort of cut to it, and then there's a bit of them playing it, and then they slowly fade it out, and you're left there in silence, thinking, what the hell just happened? Anyway, so I have to be honest, I've never really listened to it as a whole, so I had to do it this time. I listened to it a couple of times, and for me, actually, the highlight on this album isn't really "You Silly Woman." There's a song with Jon Anderson and Steve Howe on, and it's called "Song of Innocence," and they performed that on their '76 tour, where I think they all did a solo spot, didn't they? But they quickly dropped that section from the tour, probably because nobody liked it. But this is quite a sweet little song. I don't know.
William Blake. William Blake lyrics, isn't it?
Well, yes, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
I think
Sorry to interrupt. Carry on.
No, it's all right. I actually didn't know. I didn't know that, but
yeah.
I think Jon Anderson turns in a very good performance on this. That it is quite.
It's right up his alley, isn't it?
I'll blame William Blake because there is a passage on there talking about sheep, well, specifically lambs, and I don't think it should be repeatable, actually, especially to our Welsh listeners, because it could be misconstrued. I mean, there's a passage about stroking lamb's fur, and I don't know, it's the way my mind functions, but I thought, oh, that's not right, is it? That's not normal. You can't sing about that. So apart from that, that's the standout song. And the thing is, everything about this album it's actually surprising. You know, it's a well-produced album. You know, the songs aren't bad. It's just they're not that great. All Music said it isn't a terrible album, but most Yes fans felt it wasn't money well spent. And I think that's from the cover, which looks like, I think it's his attempt at the White Album, because it's so sort of boring, isn't it? It's just a plain white cover with ramshackled.
We're into the covers already.
We're into Hall's Gallery. It's a pretty uninspiring cover, I think. Got to number 41 in the UK charts, which is pretty good going.
Surprisingly high.
It's surprisingly high. But yeah, I mean, titles like "Ooh Baby." I mean, come on. And what's it, Avacac? I mean, Avacac, not Abacab, it's Avacac.
Avacac. Yeah.
So it leaves me a little bit disappointed, but also surprised that he's obviously got musical mates that he could work with, and it's, if it wasn't Alan White and it wasn't connected with Yes, who'd listen to it? But you might listen to them down the pub or that kind of thing. But yeah, so he's in last spot, I'm afraid, for me, is Alan.
Okay, good. Well, look, I wonder how much crossover there's going to be tonight, because my number 8 is Ramshackled by Alan White. Now, I think that, I mean, you're right. The wager of it is, let's do this album, fellas. I'll do this album with my mates. And then it's under the name of Alan White from Yes. And if we do that, maybe it will sell. I mean, that's the wager, isn't it? And it's not... It probably worked out quite well for them if it reached number 41, but it's not a fair wager, is it? I mean, I think that the problem here really is that the phrase Alan White here is actually a metaphor. I mean, yeah, the only truly Alan White element is that he occasionally sort of talks them into lopping a beat off a bar or at certain points. I mean, I think they'd get done under the Trades Descriptions Act today, wouldn't they? No, what's it called? At the Advertising Standards Authority or something. I mean, it's basically an album by a group that Alan White happens to be in, but I suppose that's a less catchy name, isn't it? I mean, at times I felt like I was listening to, I don't know about you, but this is I feel like the music is sort of that they put together, his mates. It's like black American music, really. I mean, at times I felt like I was listening to a Gil Scott-Heron album or something like that. Or, I don't know, like, what are they called? Steel Pulse or something like that. I mean, there I'm thinking of the abomination that is You Silly Woman. Let's go back to talking about that, By the way, whose verse, by the way, You Silly Woman, that's a terrible chorus. And the verse, by the way, is just a straight rip-off of Come Up and See Me, Make Me Smile, isn't it? By, what's his face? I can't even remember his name.
Steve Harley.
And you're right. There's a really sort of uncomfortable Old Grey Whistle Test recording with them playing a couple of songs off this album, I think, with the Alan White's new band, who were actually his old band from when he was much younger, I think. Sort of interspersed with various members of Yes, who look like they're not quite sure, why they're there. And those clips occasionally get interpolated in Yes videos, Yes documentary videos. I mean, that's a bit surprising. I think that it's so weird, this album, because so sort of off the mark, because he is a brilliant musician, Alan White, has to be said. He's he's a very good drummer. I don't quite know what style he drums in. But I mean, it's effective, and I think that he's obviously an excellent musician. Was he not capable of writing any music of his own at all?
I think he did dabble, didn't he, later on, particularly with Chris Squire.
Exactly.
So maybe at this point, maybe it's a bit like Ringo. Ringo did do stuff, didn't he? But it took a while to sort of germinate. So it may have been like that with Alan.
I think that might not be the best comparison, but fair enough. I mean, I think that I mean, even if he'd written something bad, it would have been more, on point than this, I think. And I mean, like Bill Bruford, we'll come back to perhaps, but we will. There's an interesting comparison to be made there. Bill Bruford was actually writing on his album, and Alan White didn't, just didn't have it in him. But it's quite surprising, I think. Why is it? One final point. Why is it called Ramshackled?
Well, I think it's because the whole thick album is a hodgepodge. So you could say it's a bit ramshackle, the way it's thrown together, because nothing stylistically goes together, nothing gels. That's my, another criticism of his album, that it's just like various bands turning up playing different songs. Nothing matches.
Right, but I wonder whose idea it was to make it a past participle, to turn to ramshackle into a verb. Maybe they were trying to, if sort of like charting a new course. Hey guys, let's ramshackle. All right, good. I think we've said enough on that one. So best avoid perhaps that one. It's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? Now let's go on to number 7. Ben, I'm interested to see who you've got at 7.
I've just got a small point to make in the running order, because I may have missed. This is going to look so professional, isn't it? Yeah. But we've got Chris Squire, Jon Anderson, Pat Moraz, Rick Wakeman, Peter Banks, Steve Howe, Alan White. We didn't pick Bruford, did we?
Oh,
or did we?
I've got Bruford.
Oh, you've got, but you may have to talk about Bruford on your own, because I left him out.
This is brilliant. So this is the top 7 for you and a top 8 for me. Well, this is the first, isn't it?
You could mention Bill, I guess. I mean, I have listened to it, but I don't know enough to
All right.
rank
Well, look,
it.
I think this is a technical problem, isn't it? I think that I can see a way around this,
Yeah,
but what it will involve is me doing an extra one,
yeah.
right? So um, maybe I should do that now,
Mm.
right? And then that'll be my number 7, and then I'll ask you for your number 6, because presumably you've got Alan White at
Yes.
7.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
correct.
all right, all right.
Yeah.
Well, look, let me do my number 7 then. This is this is podcast history, isn't it? We're making here.
It's all a bit ramshackled.
We've ramshackled it. All right, good. Well, look, my number 7 is the funny thing is that I'm now realizing that at some point I'm going to do a review of Bruford's album, and you're just going to sit there totally perplexed. All right, good. Well, look, my number 7 is. So what went through your head when I said, "Can I have your number 8?" Then,
Well, I kept thinking I didn't do Bruford, did I? That's what I thought straight
That's
away.
all right. That's all right.
Yeah.
You could have just improvised.
I could have
would have been
done.
quite appropriate, actually. Improvise a review of a Bruford album that you hadn't heard.
Could have done.
All right, good. Look, so my number 7 is "Beginnings" by Steve Howe. Let me try and do this fairly succinctly. I mean, it's rubbish, this album, isn't it? I mean, you know, it's quite. I mean, let's be honest. It doesn't work at all, this record. I think what sets it above Alan White is that he's not going to be done under the Trade Subscriptions Act. But apart from that, this is a really, really indifferent album, which I think is weird because his second album, the imaginatively titled "The Steve Howe Album," was great. It's really good. But this is all wrong, this one. I think it's got some nice arrangement points, right?
Yeah.
For example, like there's the second track, I think it's called "Australia," and there's the kind of like the way that he builds up that track, like the transitions between the sections in it, because it's a bit medley-ish, that track. I think they're quite exciting. Like I feel like I sort of know what he was going for in that track, and you know, in some of the other tracks as well, in the way that it's kind of constructed. But the problem is that it's just all of the musical ideas that are in the, you know, that go to make up those medleys are so weak. You know, the melodies, there's a lot of songs on it, and the melodies are so unmemorable. You know, I don't know why he couldn't, you know, get a good tune together. I mean, and also he's singing. I mean, this is the elephant in the room with Steve Howe. I think his singing, you know, his singing is really weak. And I think that it's got a sort of classical piece on it, isn't it? Like the title track. And I'm not sure really what that adds to the history of music at all. And so I don't know. I mean, I don't know what he was thinking here, really. I mean, I've actually read his autobiography. But I think I've obviously repressed the bit where he was talking about this record, you know. I mean, it was quite boring, his autobiography, I thought. And so I think I switched off through quite a lot of it. It was like a sort of it felt like a sort of I don't know, like a sort of police report or something. It was just going through the chronology of facts, you know, but without any sort of like literary color or anything like that. So anyway, yeah. So I'm really, really not a fan of this album. All right, good. Well, look, having said all that, what have you got at number 6 then?
Yeah, number 6. I see. Steve Howe, beginning. Beginnings.
Right.
Like you, I really like the Steve Howe album. That's great. But this one, I think I so want it to be good because, you know, the cover, it's a classic Roger Dean cover, and he's superimposed, isn't he, with his little guitar collection. You think, oh, he's in a little Roger Dean cave, you know, this is great. And then it's just a terribly disappointing album. There's no really decent tunes on it, as far as I can work out. I don't want to be horrible about his vocals, but that he can't carry being a lead singer in the way either Chris Squire could or obviously Jon Anderson can.
Mm.
He's good. I think he's good as a backing singer. Like when he's
Mm.
on Close to the Edge and some of his vocals on Topographic Oceans. I think he's quite good in that role. But and I've seen him live quite a few times. Saw him with Peter actually at Sudbury a few years back, just doing a solo tour. And yeah, he did My White Bicycle actually, which was fun. And he's
Right.
he's he's
Did he
okay.
write that?
I think he had a hand in it, didn't he? Wasn't it Keith
Keith
West, wasn't it?
West.
Is
Yeah.
it Keith West? I
So
think
they
they
write
wrote.
it together, did they? I can't really remember.
Yeah, I
Mm.
believe they did. But I've sort of put him because I've marked him down really because I expect a lot more of Steve Howe. So
Mm.
he's failed his homework on
Mm.
this one. I mean, the Australia song,
Mm.
it could be great, but
It isn't.
you know, I don't see how it relates to anything to do with Australia, really,
Mm.
personally.
Yeah.
I was expecting some didgeridoo, but it's just Steve, maybe Rolf Harris would have popped up.
Well,
Uh,
best not.
yeah, best not. He got to number 22, which is quite an achievement, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he's got a stellar cast of musicians. He's got Bruford,
Mm.
White, Pat Moraz. He's got
Mm.
members of Griffin on it. So he's got a good team on his side. I did note down there were elements that I liked. There was a sort of a saxophone theme on a track called Lost Symphony. I can't talk this evening. Lost Symphony, and I
Mm.
thought that was quite sort of Beatley, a bit sort of White Album-esque. I really like that.
Mm.
Maybe I was thinking of Savoy Truffle, that sort of saxophone part in it, the George Harrison track. And his playing is great. I noted like he had some slide guitar on. I think it's called Willow the Wisp, isn't it? I think Bruford's on that. He plays a nice ragtime piece. There's nothing wrong with his performance or his playing, but it's just a sort of incredibly disappointing album, and
Mm.
I don't know why that is. He must have been tired or
Mm. Yeah.
couldn't have been bothered. So
Probably got
sorry, Steve.
probably got jet lags. Just come back from Australia,
Oh yeah, he's come
apparently.
back.
Yeah.
Yes,
You think
there
that
you
line
go.
from All Music where it says, "I think Yes fans felt that their money wasn't that well spent." It probably could repeat that for
Yeah.
quite a few of these albums.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I know. Because would have been quite a big outlay, I would have thought, for an album in the 70s.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
quite a
Quite
lot,
right.
Mm.
All right, good. Well, so we've dispatched that one.
Hmm.
Now I shall do my number 6.
Hmm.
Because basically all that's happened here, because of the elision of Bruford, is that we've switched places, haven't we? In the
Yes.
who's presenting first. That's all. So okay, so my number 6 is The Two Sides of Peter Banks. Right. Now it's not too bad, this album. I think it's got some interesting themes on it. It's frequently quite exciting. Again, we slightly have the, I don't want to bring up the Advertising Standards Authority again, because they've already been overrepresented in this episode. But it's two sides of Peter Banks. But it turns out that one side of Peter Banks is Jan Ackerman. Apparently, I mean, this is really a Peter Banks and Jan Ackerman album, isn't it? And I don't know why they've actually compounded the misery by putting 2 pictures of Peter Banks on the front cover, as if to say, yeah, and you definitely weren't. You're not included on the legal side. I don't know. So it's weird. Again, it's Peter Banks again. His name's being used as a metaphor here. I mean, actually, I'm not really sure why it's called Two Sides of Peter Banks either. That's the other thing I found perplexing. It's a bit like ramshackled. What's the point of this title exactly? And I think it's a bit like a sort of guitar demonstration album.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about twin guitars. It's all guitar, this, because they're both guitarists, Peter Banks and Jan Ackerman. From Focus, of course, Jan Ackerman. I mean, it's all guitar to the point where, at one point the drums come in and you sort of think, what is that? Another guitar? Are those drums or is that another guitar? Um, I think it's ironic actually because he sometimes sounds like Steve Howe. At certain points, he sounds a bit like Steve Howe. Which is kind of like funny because you think, well, that's Steve Howe replaced him in Yes, of course. Well, it could be him sounding like Steve Howe. It could be Jan Ackerman. Who knows? Nice bit of Phil on here. Phil Collins, of course, because Phil Collins plays on everything. Sort of all the Genesis solo albums, all the Yes solo albums.
Sorry, Tim. Did Phil audition for Yes? Phil Collins.
I think what happened. No, I think what happened was that Yes invited him to audition, and he never took them up on it.
Oh,
I think I happen to know that story.
Was this when he was more sort of ensconced in Genesis?
I can't quite remember exactly when it was. It would have been perhaps around that time, but he would have probably been happier in Yes. But I think Phil's comment on it was that it was one of those sort of like unrealized dreams. Like he spoke to Jon Anderson. Jon Anderson said, "Give me a call," and he just never did. Like one of those things. Like maybe it was. Something in him was saying, maybe if I gave them the call and I went in an audition, it would be traumatic. And if I joined, it would be traumatic. And so maybe this opportunity in life is best left alone. I think it was something like that, really.
Yeah. Nice to be asked, I suppose.
Nice to be asked. Yeah. Because it could have ended up like him playing with Led Zeppelin at Live Aid, couldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, could have been.
For the record, I think he was really good on Live Aid, whatever Jimmy Page says. Anyway, fine. Also, you get the treat on this album, if I may, of Phil playing with John Wetton on at least one point. So it's like a cool thought experiment. What would King Crimson have sounded like mid-period King Crimson with Phil on drums? I actually thought that track, Long Track, Stop That, is it called, which I thought was more or less unlistenable. I thought it was a sort of more or less unlistenable version of Apocalypse in 9/8. But yeah, I don't know. Phil was up for anything, wasn't he, at this point? Also, one final thing on this album. Banks shows his prog credentials because there seems to be a quote from Roundabout in that track called Nights. And I thought I detected a slight musical allusion to Peace, a Theme by King Crimson in there on side one. Actually, side one of this is pretty coherent, I think. It's just an instrumental album, so you have to you have to sort of know that going in, I think. And if you just don't expect any sort of like singing or anything, it's actually quite a sort of relatively successful album, I think. At least the first half is. Anyway, what have you got at now? What are we doing now? You're at 5 now, are you?
Yeah, well, my number 5 is Two Sides of Banks. I struggled with the bottom albums, but I think it just nudges. I think it fairly well nudges Steve Howe. Actually, it's not a great album in my opinion, although some may like it. But having said that, there are some interesting moments. I mean, I think. Yeah, as you say, it's difficult actually now to know who's playing. I mean, is it Jan Ackerman or how do you tell if it's Jan Ackerman or Peter Banks? I think Steve Hackett's on it as well, isn't he? Is there a little acoustic, a classical piece?
I think that might be Jan Ackerman.
Oh, that's Jan Ackerman. Well,
sorry,
don't know what Steve Hackett's doing, but he's on there as well.
He was probably in the back crushing wine glasses.
Let me have a go. There's sort of nothing memorable on this album, but it's not as bad as that may sound. I mean, I remember listening to this a few years ago and thinking, blimey, he does sound like Steve Howe. I always compare Steve Howe a little bit to Wes Montgomery, the jazz player. There's something Bill Bruford always says, Steve Howe always liked jazz, Wes Montgomery, he always mentions Wes Montgomery. So there is that, element. And I think maybe this is just Peter Banks reminding us that, he can actually play guitar. I mean, I think he really got fired because they didn't like his stage posturing. I think that was it, wasn't it? It was a little bit trying to do a Pete Townsend. with a guitar.
I think the same thing happened, if I may, with Tony Kaye.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not into that, are they? Not into that whole posturing on stage
It's a
thing.
very weird thing that I mean, we don't talk about this much, but like, it's a weird, that sort of live on stage dynamic between a group of chaps. It's actually a more important part of it than you might think. What it actually feels like for them being in that space together. It's not quite as weird as it sounds. I think I remember seeing an interview with John Wetton where he said they had to kick Alan Holdsworth out of UK or whatever it was because he said he's just stood with his back to the audience. And you think, oh right, okay, so I see why that might have been a problem. I don't know, even though he's like an amazing guitarist.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, carry on.
No. I mean, I think there was a thing that he started skipping rehearsals with Yes.
Oh.
I think he got fed up with the orchestration on, was it Time and a Word?
Time and a Word, yeah.
I think he got a bit disgruntled. But there is some interesting playing. I think he was a competent player. It's the same as Tony Kaye. They're not bad musicians. Any other band they'd be perfectly fine, but it's just this thing about Yes, isn't it? This whole thing of who's going to take us on to the next level. We've got to get somebody even better, and it must have been awful, really.
It's like sort of football transfers, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly like that. Yeah, I don't know if you can hear the rain started here, and
no, it's all right.
Yeah, and you're fine. Yeah, I'm in a shed basically. That section on White Horse, there is a little bit of Moog or Moog, very radiophonic workshop sounding Doctor Who, and that is a snippet of Roundabout, isn't it? That do 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 do, and he claims that he came up with that a little bit.
I'm sure that's true. I'm sure that's true.
So he's got some beef there, isn't he? It's a bit like Anthony Phillips with part
Musical
of
Box.
Musical Box. That's it. Yeah, I might have to start shouting at any moment because it's a tin roof on my garage.
Well, the thing is, Sean, we can't hear it, or I can't hear it.
You can't. Well, that's good. Yeah,
it's affecting your consciousness, but apart from that.
But it's kind of a jam album, isn't it? And this is the problem with it that it's actually not a bad little album, but I don't think there's a lot of structure to it to sort of go back to. It's not as bad as All Things Must Pass, album number 3, whatever, where you just basically throw it out, don't you? Or melt it down and make a 1970s flower pot hold. Sorry, a flower pot holder. You can do that, can't you? You can heat the vinyl. I think you can put it over a terracotta flower pot. This is a little craft tip for you. If you've got an album you don't like, I think you can heat it in the oven and it'll melt round a flower pot, and then you get the little label in the middle. It's quite nice. So I'm not suggesting
this wasn't mentioned on the All Music review.
I'm not suggesting you do the two sides of Banks, but maybe you could do it with Ramshackled. Sorry, I've digressed.
All right. No, good. You're done with that one. Okay, cool. It's funny. I feel a certain sympathy emerging between us on some of these albums. Well, but we'll see where this goes.
We'll see where it lies. Yeah.
Yeah. Now my number 5 is Elias of Sun Hillow. Now I think that this is a complicated one. This one, isn't it? I think I would expect. It's not completely charmless. This, but I think it's sort of lacking the intense inspiration of Yes. And, from Jon Anderson, I would expect more because, I'd expect a few more memorable tunes, I think, because this is a sort of vocal album. And, so I think, at least it's an album made by a vocalist, and the key composer in Yes, I would say, if that's not offensive to people, to Yes fans. I mean, I think that he was the key figure in Yes, really. And then actually reminds me a little bit of, now I think about it, of Tony Banks. His solo debut was way down in my list, and it was like, how is it possible that he didn't manage to come up with something better, given how important he was in Genesis? But yeah, there is one. Some of it I think is I found some of it reminiscent of Simon and Garfunkel funnily enough, which I think is a sort of folk influence on him. At least, the vocal parts, of course. What else? I think there's one track I quite like the tune of, which is called Naon, which is like the minor key one. Ari, that one. I think that's quite nice. But I mean, that does not an album make, does it? One sort of short vocal passage. Personally, I can live without all the atmospherics, because I find atmospherics sort of a bit patronizing, you're supposed to feel like this now, thanks thanks, I'll decide how I feel. What else? I think has he written his own language?
Yes, he did. He's a bit like Tolkien, isn't he?
Oh my
God, knocking it up in his garden shed. So
he's made up his own language. The divisions between the songs are inexplicable. So my theory, actually, listening to it, was this is hieroglyphic. All of this is hieroglyphics, basically. All of the symbolic, the whole symbolic dimension of this album is hieroglyphic, basically. And then the question becomes, who are hieroglyphics for exactly? Which has always been the issue with hieroglyphics throughout history. Who's supposed to interpret this? Is God the audience here, or the universe, or the God, the God of history, or whatever? But it's not us, is it? Are we supposed to interpret all of this? And I think that's the point, really, is that I think maybe if you cared about the story and the made up language and everything, maybe you'd enjoy this more, this album. But I don't really, I'm more music orientated, I suppose, than words orientated. So. I like singing, but I don't care so much about words. So, if you take the story into account, this is probably a fairly coherent affair. Maybe a sort of respectable attempt at a side project. Doing something different, but it doesn't really speak to me. As an audience member.
No.
All right, good. So, I mean, that's all I have to say on that, really. Do you want?
It's one of those albums, coming out on the cusp or during punk, isn't it? And it's one of those low-hanging bad apples in the punk movement's eyes. Easy to grab and stamp on. Yeah,
I suppose so. Yeah, but I mean, he's trying to be fair, he's trying to do something a bit interesting, isn't he?
Yeah,
which you think would sort of inoculate him against, standard punk critiques. But I think it's just it's too circumstantial, I think, all of this, for my taste. What a horrible thing to say.
I'll come back to that. I'm not saying how much I'll come back to it, but I'll come back to that.
All right.
That's interesting.
You're four?
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I've got here, and I'm a big fan of his. Mm-hmm. He's made some great albums. I've got Rick Wakeman,
the golfer.
6 wives, and I've got 7 wives crossed out because I can never remember how many wives Henry VIII. It's difficult, isn't it? Did he have 7 wives or 6? So he got asked to make this album by the head of A&M Records. So while they were on tour, I think Brian Lane came up and said, "Oi, Rick, Jerry Moss wants to see you, in his office." And he persuaded him, by greasing his palm with silver, and gave him a Cadillac, to go away and make an album. Here's a Cadillac. Great, isn't it, in those days? And Rick said he approached this album like a sort of a series of surrealist paintings. Okay. Now,
by the way,
yeah, go on.
Sorry, do you know that story about Mike Oldfield being booked to play the Tubular Bells live at the Queen Elizabeth Hall and deciding that he didn't want to go on at the very last minute? And Richard Branson, that bastard, excuse me, said, "If you go on, I'll give you a Cadillac." I think it was, my Bentley in the car park. You can have it, right? Yeah, there you go. So there's a certain pattern here amongst.
And he did it, and they all played out of tune.
Exactly.
But it didn't matter because nobody could understand what it was all about anyway. So it all worked out well. Um, so,
Sorry,
so
carry on.
I will, Karen. Now, I think some of the themes on this album are absolutely brilliant. Like Catherine of Aragon and so on, and Catherine Howard reminds me a little bit of Morning Has Broken. There's some wonderful themes that I think are just inspired. He's incredible at coming up with this stuff, and he's a bit of a genius. If I like Rick, but I do think you know some of the section. I mean, it's not too. It's not too. Oh, sorry, my computer's disappeared. Am I still there? I'm there. Something popped up on the computer screen.
No, it's all fine. It's all fine.
He tends to sort of. Well, my problem, I think, basically, is relating the themes to the characters. These women, and I think he did sort of say that he didn't structure this album chronologically. He arranged it musically so it sounded interesting. So you can't sort of go. Some historians might go, oh, Jane Seymour this didn't happen then, or I can't even remember who had their head chopped off and
Yeah,
who didn't.
I mean, I like the idea that I don't know, like Henry VIII left Catherine of Aragon for Anne of Cleves. I mean, the whole the whole history of Britain and probably the entire world would have been different if
Well, she looked all right in the painting. I don't know. So it's like that. So anyway, so I don't know that I buy, because some of the, like Catherine Howard, I've put here, is Catherine Howard a Benny Hill character? Because there's a sort of comedy, this is showing her humorous side. She wasn't all, just stony faced and historical. Bringing her to life by using a sort of Benny Hill section. And he does tend to, throughout his career, he throws in those sort of little, what I call sort of Keystone Cops. It's very music hall. There's a music hall side to it. I'm sure it was fun in the 70s on ice and nights of skating after each other, but it doesn't quite work on the vinyl for me. So I always find that sort of spoils it a little bit. But what he does do is bloody amazing. Some of these sort of main themes. I mean, it's like the King Arthur theme was the general election music, wasn't it?
Oh,
It's
is that
got
right?
such a okay, yeah. It's got such a sort of gravitas to it, and he's a brilliant composer. I mean, I think I put here a section in Anne Boleyn on the Moog. It reminded me a lot of. Do you remember the two Ronnies? They
Yeah.
did over here in the UK. They did a sort
Yes,
of
indeed.
a skit called Piggy Malone and Charlie Farley, and it was a sort of a slight disco beat with an early Moog synthesizer. So at times, some of these themes sound like cop show themes, and I sort of struggle to place that with, I don't know, Anne Boleyn or Jane Seymour. It just doesn't for me. But that's my opinion, and I'm not knocking him, and I think it is a good album. Just a last little thing, because I'm rambling on. I'm all over the place with Rick Wakeman's album here.
You're
Um,
ramshackling.
I'm ramshackling. When he played it to the A&M music chiefs in the office, apparently there was a stony silence, and then one of them piped up, "This would be great when you've got some vocals on it." So it's Mike Oldfield yet again, isn't it? Um, he got now a little word about the album cover.
Do you think they said that to Peter Banks as well? It's to be great when actually no, it won't be great. If someone would just say it won't be great even if you got vocals on it. That'd be
Yes, yeah. Oh dear.
the alternative meeting.
A quick word about the album cover. I'm pretty ambivalent about it, but
You surprised me.
he had the photo done at Madame Tussauds,
Mm.
and apparently behind the curtain, you can just see a glimpse behind the six wives of Richard Nixon. So I'll leave you with that thought.
Yeah, brilliant. Someone
Oh,
forgot
dear.
to forgot to like sort the curtain out. It's so makeshift, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
All right, good. I'm going to come back to this album later on, so I won't say anything else. And my number 4 is Feels Good to Me by Bill Bruford, which I did bother to review, unlike you. um, it's a shame because I would have liked to have got your opinion on it. Maybe we could do a separate episode on it because it's your kind of album, I think. It's kind of great, this album. I mean, to be honest, I was really surprised by it. This is probably the biggest shock to me of the whole thing. This whole exercise was listening to this. Now you said that you forgot to review it. I'm going to go on and on and on about how amazing. No. I mean, I was going to say this honestly. I'm not just saying this to wind you up. I didn't realize how sort of musically talented Bill Bruford was, and I know that sounds a bit, rude or like a backhanded compliment, but I just thought he was a great drummer. Like one of the greatest, in the history of rock. Let's be frank about it. But this is sort of, I think, genuinely enjoyable and well written music. I mean, I think basically for me this is as good as fusion ever gets. This album, I think it works. The album works precisely at the level it's supposed to work at, which is namely like Bill Bruford kind of colouring and making palatable and like let's say like drumming the hell out of a kind of jazz rock fusion racket, basically. And it's kind of brilliant. Some of it is a bit King Crimson-y. The ending almost sounds like the ending of the Duke Suite by Genesis. I think it's got a lot of emotion in for technical music. It's very technical music. But it's got like quite emotional sort of harmonic developments. They're often quite moving. They've got some lovely sort of inverted chords, which I suppose are bread and butter to jazzers, But if you're into rock, you don't get treated to nice inverted chords, on a regular basis. But it's all here really. I also like all the musicians. I really like Annette Peacock's voice and her words. Alan Holdsworth, who here occasionally sounds like Robert Fripp, especially on the track Back to the Beginning, is great. Really amazing guitarist, of course. How could I think otherwise? And of course, it's got Dave Stewart on, who's writing a little bit of the stuff with Bill Bruford. That's not Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics. That's Dave Stewart from National Health, Hatfield in the North. I think he's a safe pair of hands. My final trivial comment is I find it weird that the last track is called Adios a la Pasada, which is Spanish, and of course I speak a bit of Spanish, and that presumably that's supposed to mean goodbye to the past. But I think that in Spanish it should be adios al pasado, because pasado, the past, is a masculine noun in Spanish. So la pasada means something amazing. So is it saying goodbye to something amazing? If that were the case, it would be appropriately titled. But it's a very obscure play on words if that's the case in Spanish, So because it is an amazing album, this it is extraordinary, I think. So it's not quite my taste. It's not quite my métier. That's right. So it's not higher for that reason. But I do think it's got a lot to commend it, this record. So I won't say any more on that because obviously this isn't one that you've had a look at. But yeah, very good effort from Mr. Bruford there, I think.
Well, now I'll have to check that out because it's one I've listened to in the past, but it obviously didn't make an impression at that point. But I'll give it a bit of play. I
mean, I'm not that familiar with his solo work, to be honest. But it's people say that it's like his best album. But I mean, who knows? We'd have to listen to all the rest of it to work that out. But I think maybe we could do that at some point, but not yet. Okay, good. Now, what's your number 3?
Well, I'll give you a clue. He's got he comes from the land of Toblerone, and he's got the most amazing hair, the most amazing sort of poodle-like. King Charles II-esque, I always think. But he's Swiss, so I don't know who the Swiss version of King Charles II would be. Anyway, so it's Pat Moraz.
Probably the Swiss version of King Charles is probably called King Charles. If you had to put money on it.
So it's the story of I. Now this isn't one I've listened to a great deal, but I found this a very interesting album, and it's got a sort of um, futuristic sci-fi theme to it. It's about people entering a building in the jungle somewhere. I take it South America somewhere, and they die when they fulfill their dreams and reach the top of this building. And I think the couple in the end fall in love on their journey upwards, and they all have to jump off, but they ascend into the afterlife.
The bit like
Music.
the that sort of what's it called? The fella who oh god no, we shouldn't do this because we're going to get really lost.
Yeah.
You know the Native American thing where they used to have to go up the steps and their heads would roll down the steps. They were sacrificed to the sun god, I think, weren't they? Because I think they were monotheistic.
Is it the Mayans or the
Mayans? That's right. Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
Or the Aztecs, Inca. No.
yeah.
Anyway, whatever. One of the ones that were displaced by invaded by the Spanish. But yeah, perhaps it's a reference to that because it's Brazil, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, no,
yeah.
I mean, not that those guys were in Brazil, but God, that was a historical mess. That explanation. I apologise.
It's got good reviews. Our friend Stumpy, Paul Stump. You've got his book, haven't you?
I have indeed. I'll get it.
He loved it. He said it pointed to a jazz fusion future with Yes. Tim's just gonna find Stumpy's book.
I can't find it now.
I'll just keep talking. Well, right, I'll just carry on. I think there's some incredible playing on it. It's sort of a mix of, where do you start? Fusion, prog, bit of world music. Very interesting album. And it's one song, isn't it? 46 minutes long, split up.
Sort of.
Yeah, I mean it's an odd album. I mean, I've put here Impact. Reminded me of Kojak, the Kojak theme for some reason. Um, Now, one song I'll get this out of the way. One song I was a bit perturbed by was Kachaka or Kaka. I can't even say it. Kakaka. To me, it sounded like Ewok music. If you remember the third Star Wars film with the little furry teddy bears with horrific teeth, and they're doing a little dance at the end. It's kind of, they've won. They've beaten Darth Vader or whatever it is. It reminds me of it's a very, he did use indigenous people, I think, didn't he, to create this track. But it's a little bit Ewok-y for my taste. Interestingly, they used part of this.
Do you mean the bit? I think I know the bit you mean. Do you mean the bit where they go da 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 da?
Yeah, it goes on a bit.
It's mad, that bit.
And they used that bit apparently in the radio version of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Apparently, there was an excerpt, a news flash on the Starship Heart of Gold about David Beeblebrox stealing the Starship Heart of Gold, and they used that as the news flash music in the background. So a bit of airplay there for Pat.
Were the Ewoks supposed to be the Viet Cong? Or have I got that wrong?
Ah, could well be. See, Peter's really the Star Wars expert. I'm more British sci-fi.
Yeah, no, it's just like I just think it's bordering on racism. A lot of this, isn't it?
Well, yeah, we're just treading a fine line.
Fine line, aren't we? Yeah.
Robert Moog was on this album, tinkering with the synths.
Right.
I don't know. Some great titles on here. The Imp's Dance. That's a nice thought, isn't it? But what I did want to say was, this guy, Pat Moraz, he couldn't have been sacked for his playing, could he? Because he's got to be the equal, if not, well, I can't say he's better than Rick Wakeman, but technically, I think he was amazing. And, it does kind of show you where Yes could have gone, I think, and I think they all liked him. They all speak fondly of him, don't they? It's just brushed over. Why did they fire him? Yeah. Actually, I put Best Years of Our Lives. I wondered if that came out as a single because that's the most sort of ballad-like song on there. Kind of reminded me of Small Creep's Day for some
Right.
reason. I've made a note. Might be just the singer. It's got a great ending. I think the ending of it is great, and you do get that sense of the couple drifting off into space. It might be a crazy story, but at least it's soundly put together. And it was the 70s. I mean, God, albums were weird then, weren't they? So I think it's a great effort. This album, I enjoyed listening to it.
All right. I shan't say a word
That's it.
because I'm going to come back to this topic. My number three is, that was your three, wasn't it? My number three is Fish Out of Water. I think this is sort of I think this album starts incredibly well. It's incredibly promising. I think the beginning, the first two tracks, I think are awesome. And incredibly exciting. The sound, the mixing, the way that he plays the bass, everything, like the tunes. I think it's brilliant, really. But I think after those first two tracks, I think that I think the rest of the album's sort of interesting, but without being particularly exciting. It's got three very long, but slightly meandering tracks, I think. So I think that this is a slight sort of, I don't know, failed encounter, as the psychoanalyst would say. I mean, I think that the track 2 reminds me of the Beach Boys. It's a Beach Boys type arrangement. I mean, the thing is that the arrangement, whoever did the arrangements on this album is a genius. Was it him? I don't know. But I mean, whoever did it, I mean, he at least commissioned it. So I mean, he knows what he's doing.
I know who, sir.
Can you say?
And Andrew Price Jackson. It was his friend from the Sin. Did all the orchestral.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's a shout out to Andrew.
He's dead.
All right, good. Yeah, he's dead.
No.
So yeah, I think it's surprising he didn't make more solo albums. I think because there was some real promise here. So yeah, I just every time I put this album on, I think, oh, this is brilliant. And then by the end of side one, I think, right, I'm done with it now. I know that a lot of people really love this album, but I just think I sort of experimented a little bit as a thought experiment with like the programming. I wondered whether that second track could have been the closing track, and maybe that would have made the album, or at least the closing track on side one, that would have made the whole of side one work. And I think about those things, because I'm obsessive. But I think that basically there's not quite enough material on here, to make it through to the end. That's my feeling. I suspect that you've got this one higher, but anyway, yeah. Okay, so what's your number two?
Number two is I've got Elias on here,
Right,
and it's one or two things I wanted to say. I'm actually shocked that I found out that Vangelis isn't on this album, because you were talking about atmospherics, and I think probably Vangelis is known for that, isn't he? Jon Anderson says that he was inspired by his obviously at rehearsals, start of Relay, and they struck up a friendship, didn't they, a bond. But for years I always thought Vangelis was playing keyboards on this, but it apparently wasn't, unless he's taken the secret to his grave, and he actually was. So my standpoint on this album is that Jon Anderson knocked this whole album up, as you do, in his back garden, in his studio, in Buckinghamshire or wherever it was, and it's an incredible sort of vision. It's a little bit like Tubular Bells. I don't think it's as good as Tubular Bells, but he's played basically all the instruments himself. He's taught himself. He always thought he wasn't a very good musician, obviously being the singer, but he's learnt to play, to a fair standard. Apart from drums, he's learnt to play all these instruments. So I think it's an incredible effort from him, that he's done this. And I think he said he was exhausted after making this album. He got told to hurry up by the record company, because he was stalling on it. Um, it's a bit of a bizarre, again, bit of a bizarre concept behind this album. It takes its theme from the cover of Fragile. So you've got the Morglade, which is the floating, literally a spaceship, and wherever they come from, their planet's going to explode, or who cares? It's going to explode. And then so Elias is a magician who helps them avoid destruction, and he's helped by Ranyart and Quoquart, who are his fellow musicians. Do we need to know? But you do sort of think, well, maybe Disney will do a film of it. But I think that ship has sailed, a bit like the Morglade now. Um, I can totally see why you're not so keen on it. It's a very sort of a fantasy album, and as you say, he made up this language. I mean, I sort of like it from the Tolkien-esque view of it, that he's he must have been on drugs, mustn't he? He must have been on something to come up with this album. But it's just the vision of it. It's like he's like an English eccentric, isn't he? He's locked himself away in his garden shed and come up with this crazy sort of album. Um,
Mm.
I,
It's like one of
he
those
apparently
children's shows, isn't it? Oliver Postgate or something did it in the
could
shed,
be. Yeah, I think that's the charm of it. I think that's the charm of it for
Right.
me.
Mm.
He sat on this. He wouldn't play it to anyone. He wouldn't even play it to his wife, let alone Arma Ertegun, who kept asking, how's the solo album coming on? Now Stumpy, he did like it. He said it was a better definition of progressive rock than even Tales from Topographic Oceans. So
Right.
I don't know.
Good
That's
old
what Stumpy
Stumpy.
said. Uh, but it does. I think my criticism of it, that I think there are some nice songs. I mean, I like Meeting and Ocean Song, and I think there are some good tunes on it. Particularly, I think the start of it is very good. I think side one's very, very good. Um, it does. I think where it falls down is it perhaps it treads a precarious line between what I call prog rock and garden centre music. If you ever go to, everybody goes to a garden centre on a Sunday, in England, and that's what we do. It's just what we do. We don't go to church. We go to a garden centre, and
Yeah,
you
or
go
a car
to,
boot sale.
yeah, or a garden. Well, if it's raining, you go to the garden centre, and you
I
go in the
see.
cafe, and there's a little section with sort of jungle-looking plants and a cafe, and there's some used to be CDs, and you could play a new age album about dolphins or something like that, and that it does tread a fine line. I think this is the start of perhaps that sort of new agey
Mm.
ness, which I
Yeah.
think Mike Oldfield as well dallied a bit into that area.
I think that's my
But
problem with it, really. I
I should
don't.
imagine it is.
I have a problem with
Yeah,
new age stuff, and I
yeah.
can't. I switch off.
I mean, I think he swerves just enough to avoid that, and
Fair
perhaps
enough.
he does go down that path. I
Mm.
think later on. I'm not a particular fan of his
Mm.
solo career. I mean, he did some nice tunes with Vangelis, but I like it. I think, as you say, there's something eccentric about it, and it's not my number one, but you know, a word about the album cover actually, because you'd think that was Roger Dean, but it's not.
Oh, I didn't
Um,
know that.
Roger Dean was unavailable, so apparently I forget his name, but he did a lot of the posters for the Isle of Wight festival,
Oh,
and I think Roger recommended him. So it is taken from Roger Dean's design for Fragile, but yeah, it's not him. And there's also a little illustration inside of John with his
mm.
wife and his daughter, and that's illustrated by a guy called Jeff Cummings, who illustrated the Doctor Who Target books in the 1970s. So it's a little Doctor Who link there as well.
Yeah, we need a jingle for that, don't we, for the
Yeah,
podcast?
yeah.
Sean's references to Doctor Who. All right, lovely. Okay, good.
Mm.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah.
Mm.
Now, look, my number. Let's get on with it. My number 2 is the story of I. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to? I've written a little playlet. Do you want me to perform?
Oh, please.
The Patrick Moraz playlet. Yeah. Okay, so I'm not going to do the accent because it'd come off wrong. Okay, here we go. Hello, lads. How's it going? Yeah, all right. Yeah. When are we doing the next album? Well, actually, we've decided we're not going to do another album. Oh, but what? Yeah, we decided we're not going to do another album. But the first album went great. Yeah, but we decided we're not going to do another album. Oh, right. Well, what are we doing instead? Oh, we decided we're all going to do solo albums. Solo albums? Yeah, solo albums. So we're not going to do another album as a band then, for the moment? No. We've decided we're all going to do solo albums. Well, what am I supposed to do? You're going to do a solo album as well. There you are. And scene. Do you like that?
Brilliant.
So yeah, like the unexpected phenomenon of a Patrick Moraz album. But he sounded like he was really ready for it, didn't he? I mean, he had the whole theme worked out and everything. Went to Brazil. I mean, it sounds like I sometimes think when you listen to this album, it sounds like you're walking through like a Brazilian street market, with Patrick Moraz. This is I once made a joke about this thing about like this sounds like 2 bands playing at once, but this sounds like 3 bands playing at once. There's so much going on this album. It's so busy and frenetic, right? It's almost too much, I think. But I think there's a lot to like here. I would say. I think the first part is quite terrific, actually, quite terrific. The beginning. But I think it goes downhill. At a push, I can cope with almost the whole of the first side, although I think the last song on side 1 is pretty soppy. I mean, the ballads here, I don't know if it's to do with the singers, but I mean, to me, they almost go into sort of Gilbert O'Sullivan territory. I don't think they're especially good tunes or anything. I think, but there are some nice vocal passages in it. But what I was actually going to say was that so side 1 is kind of works for me. Side 2, I think, is a real mess. I don't like it at all, and I don't even like the ending. You were saying that you thought the ending was all right. I'm out by that point. It's like what's it called? Dragon's Den. It's Shark Tank, they call it in America. I'm out. Yeah, it sounds a bit like, as you said, a brilliant musician, absolutely brilliant. And I think that, yeah, you were saying, is he better than Rick? Like that as almost as a joke, but it's like, yeah, I mean, I think he's almost better than Rick Wakeman. I mean, it's like he's so good at keyboards and so, musically imaginative that I think, I think it was a good choice for Yes, actually. Relaya's a great album. This sounds a bit like Relaya, I think, at certain points, which shows his importance to Yes, really, at the time. I was thinking about, have you ever heard, do you know the Alan Bennett play, The History Boys, Sean? Have you ever come across that?
Not seen it. No.
It's about sort of lads studying history at Cambridge, and there's a bit in one of the most famous lines. It's got some great lines. One of the famous lines is, "What's your definition of history?" One fucking thing after another.
Brilliant.
And there's a bit in it where they start talking about studying history in the subjunctive. History in the subjunctive mood. That's to say, like, what if, I suppose they call that counterfactual history, really. But, I thought about that here. Like, what if Moraz had stayed in Yes? What if Rick hadn't returned for 2 albums? What would Going for the One be like if Moraz was on it? Would Tomato have been made? Would drama not have happened? So anyway, I'm ignoring the fact that you've gone walkabout, Sean. As I say, this is a very sort of interesting footnote, I think, in the history of this band. Yes, that's all I've really got to say on it. Is everything going all right there?
Yeah, I'm just checking that my laptop's still plugged in because the bars are.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
I'm really just gonna. Sorry, carry on. No, yeah,
Actually, we're sort of almost done, I think.
we
Uh,
are almost done.
do you want
I
to?
think
Yeah,
we've got to reveal our number ones,
we
haven't we?
have. Yeah. Do you want to go first then?
Yeah, I'll go first. I'll get it out of the way.
Mm.
So the only one left, it's is Bill Bruford, but I didn't review him, so I'm going to have to say Chris Squire, Fish Out of
Now
Water,
I'm
which
really interested to hear what you
I, yeah,
think about
I
this album.
bloody love this album. I
Right.
don't know. I thought when I initially did this that I was going to put Jon Anderson at number one, and then I haven't listened to this for years,
Mm.
and it sort of blew me away. I think it's the most focused rock album personally for me of the lot. Um, I think it's an incredibly good um, crossover, of symphonic rock, like an orchestra working with a band. I think it's incredible, and I think he did have a bit of help, didn't he, with this guy Andrew Price Jackson, who was I think his schoolmate, or they were in a couple of early bands. It was the Sin. I don't know if he was in Mabel Greer's toy shop, but he's a very good orchestrator.
Mm.
So I think that works extremely well. Um, Actually, I think I like all the tracks on this album. The only one I slightly gloss over is the sort of slightly fusiony album, which is album track, which is Lucky Seven.
Lucky Seven. Yeah.
Yeah, I zone out a bit on that, but it's got Mel Collins on that, and
Mm.
he's playing alto sax, and it's a bit of a. I don't actually like the alto sax. I'm sorry, alto sax players, if you're listening, but it reminds me of Kenny G or someone like that. I'm not
Mm.
into smooth jazz particularly. I apologise. I hold my hands up.
I don't quote Liam Gallagher very much, but I once saw an interview with Liam Gallagher where he said he thought that the sax sounded really pervy. He wouldn't have a
It
sax on
can
his
do.
album because he thought it sounded pervy,
Yes.
and I thought that's quite
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. It's often used in. Do you know, Mike? Right. Hang on. I'm going to take advantage of action. I'll keep talking. So, Chris Squire, what a great guy. I think I've got to unplug this one and plug it in. You know what's going to happen? I'm literally going to run out of power while we're discussing whoever is number one. So I've got to put this lead over here. Right. Sorry about this listener.
This is like an art event.
Yeah. So there you go. Right. I'm back. So I've got power. I hope so.
It's all right, carry on.
Well, for me, the track that I absolutely love is Silently Falling. I absolutely bloody love it. I think it's a
Right.
bit of a masterpiece. Um, how can I describe it? I love that song. I think Cannon's song is very good at the end. I'd written down the ending. It's got a wonderful sort of never-ending ending on that track with the orchestra, and it sort of reminds me a bit of Atom Heart Mother, where that orchestra is sort of breaking down, and it does go on and on and on. But if you're in the right mood for it, I think it's absolutely great. Um, I think Bruford on it is wonderful to hear him. He's sort of a master of pared down drumming on this album. There's nothing particularly flashy that he's doing, actually, or Chris Squire, but the playing is utterly perfect. It's nice to hear them both reunited, and I sort of think actually that this is another direction that yes could have gone in, or perhaps they did slightly, but
What was that website that existed before? Was it before Facebook? Was it called Friends Reunited?
oh yeah
It was the
Friends Reunited.
early version of Facebook, wasn't it?
Yeah,
It
yes, it was.
Mate was just in England anyway. So yeah, that's what this is about. Friends Reunited. Bill Bruford and Chris Squire.
Pat Moraz is on it as well, isn't he? On this album, there's a lovely bit of flute on Silently Falling, and that's Jimmy Hastings, who used to be a frequent member of the sort of Canterbury scene, Caravan. I absolutely love that track. That is, if that's the song I absolutely love. I'm getting lost in thought there. He had members of the London Sympathy, the London Sympathy, the London Symphony Orchestra, and I think he might, now this might be an old wives' tale, but I think he paid them about £3,000 for half an hour to appear in the Hold Out Your Hand video. So, you know, it couldn't have been a cheap album to make in that respect. But yeah, I love this album, and I'll be listening to it again.
Right, brilliant. I had a feeling you might go for that as number one. You know, it's like maybe we should have a thing where we try to guess each other's choices. I think you're more in line with the bass here, not bass, B-A-S-S, B-A-S-E. You know, the prog bass. I just think it starts so well, that album, and then it loses me. But you know, it's a question of taste, isn't it? I can sort of see the charm of those two long tracks, not Lucky Seven, but the two long tracks that end each side. But it just never quite convinced me compositionally. But yeah, I mean, that's all well said.
I was going to say, his playing is incredible, because I can feel he's not showing off with it playing. I think it works beautifully with the song. I think his singing is actually really good. It's impeccable. I mean, he really. If you want an example of somebody who has a very good, who elucidates well, he's got, you know, he really sings his vowels, and you know, do you know what I mean?
He's a really good singer, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
he's a really good singer. I mean, I feel like it sort of Trevor Horn said to him, "Why aren't you singing in Yes?" You know, when they did Drama. He said, "Can you be the singer?" He said, "Why don't you do it?" He said, "No, I don't." But you know, in a way, he's one of the few people who might have actually been able to sort of plausibly replace Jon Anderson as the singer, I think. Although maybe they needed more writers at that point than singers. But yeah, he's just sort of he's Chris Squire here. Sort of comes in from the outside lane, doesn't he, and just wins the race at the last minute. You know, he's a sort of underdog. But he's the sort of Hail Mary, really.
Yeah, but, I mean, he never made another album, did he?
Right, yeah.
Chris Squire's Swiss Squire. That was his second. That was his Christmas album, wasn't it? But
do you think they organised that whole? Do you think they organised that whole project based on that play on words?
Yeah,
someone thought that's a good play on words. Why don't we do it as an actual project?
Well, because by then that was the only selling point it had, because nobody would ever want to listen to him, you know, by that point.
Doing Christmas carols or whatever it was. Yeah. All right, good. Right, well, let's put everyone out their misery. My number one is The Six Wives of Henry VIII. I feel slightly embarrassed about choosing this one because I know that it's not the sophisticated choice. I think, and I know it's sort of this like pop prog, this, isn't it? You know, it's this music that's written with an eye to an audience, you know, a big audience. It's a crowd pleasing album, I think. You were saying it's weird that it didn't have any vocals on it. They said, "Where's the vocals?" But like as an instrumental album, I think it's a crowd pleaser, really, and it did very well. It's actually, you know, commercially the most successful of all of these, I think. Yeah. So I'm in line with the general public. But you're in line with the specialist public, I guess. I think, what can I say about this? I think it's a nice sort of eclectic mix of sounds, styles, and, you know, keyboards as well, as the slightly fetishistic Mike Oldfield-esque cover proves. I think it's, Catherine of Aragon was supposed to be on Fragile, wasn't it? But it couldn't be on it for contractual reasons. Good old contracts. It would have been better than Cans and Brahms anyway, because I really like it. Potential problems with this. He doesn't really through compose. The structures are a bit naive, you know, they just go from one thing to another. So it's rather prosaically written, I think. It's a bit literalist, you know, including like thematically. Our favourite Paul Stump, doesn't like Rick Wakeman at all, and says that his melodies are diatonic. They just kind of follow the scales. So there is something sort of prosaic about all of this, and I think Stumpy picks up on that. And the idea there would be that there's not much sort of dissonance. I mean, there is some dissonance in here, but I think it tends to come from the band. Not the keyboards necessarily. Some of it's slightly derivative. I'm being really negative, but some of this is derivative of classical music. Bach in particular. I think it's Toccata and Fugue. Is it in D minor? Anyway, but what's that on? Jane Seymour, isn't it? There's a bit that. That bit. That's ripped off Bach, basically. Toccata and Fugue. But having said all that, there's so many nice bits on this that I just don't really care. I just kind of I think it goes down easy, this album, I think. And I think it's a bit like, it makes me think of Keith Emerson a bit. Like if you like, I think it's a bit like Keith Emerson, isn't he, Rick Wakeman? I think if you can put aside, I think Keith Emerson has a little bit more sort of compositional integrity than Rick, but I think basically what they have in common is that if you can put aside the occasional lapses of taste, you're gonna have a good time. And I think that he's really, I've written here, he's the king of neoclassical prog riffage. I mean, that's what's the last track? They're just such fun. I think those riffs, the compositions in themselves don't necessarily hang together particularly well, but it's just got so many nice moments, fun moments. I think I can see why it was a hit with the public, this one, and I can't resist it. So that's why I put it at number one.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And he has done. He's got quite a prolific career, and I like quite a few of his albums from the 70s. I'm hard pressed to say which is the best, but he's surprisingly good. And the thing is that it's not sort of politically correct to say that you like listening to a Rick Wakeman album, is it? He's got this sort of stigma, isn't he, which I think is unfair personally, but
I think he doesn't really hasn't got a very good reputation amongst classical musicians. I think my sister's a classical musician, as you know. And she played on one of his sessions, and he still owes her money, I think.
Is he? Is it in compound interest?
Compound interest, that's right, yeah. Well, she's the union rep, so he doesn't like trade unions, I don't think. But doesn't like the musicians' union very much. But
should have played for Pat Moraz.
Yeah, because they're all about unions, aren't they, in Switzerland? Right, now, before we get any more racist and offensive, let's stop. So... Nice work, Shaun. Thanks very much. And I think we managed to negotiate our way around the fact that we'd ranked two different lists, but but yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And
great.
Thanks to everyone for listening. Remember to like and subscribe, and please comment. Let us know what your picks are, and we shall see you, God willing, on the next episode of Crapper, which should be coming up very soon, I hope. So say goodbye, Shaun.
Cheerio all.
And it's goodbye from me, two Ronnies. All right. See you, everyone. Bye.